So salinity is basically how salty your seawater is. Salinity is super important in a saltwater tank because you want to keep it as stable as possible and you don't want fluctuations. You want to have the most accurate reading at all times, and so in this video we're going to talk about 3 things that you can use to measure salinity, and then we're going to talk about my personal favorite and what I use all the time on my tank. Welcome back to the channel, guys. As the intro said, we're going to talk about salinity. Salinity is very important in a reef tank, and you want to keep it stable. So there's a couple ways you can keep it from varying. You can use a glass top, you can use an auto top off, you can manually add fresh water into the tank to a desired marked level on your tank so that you make sure you top it off to that point all the time. Once you get your salinity where you need it to be, it's very easy to keep it. So in measuring salinity, you're going to use 3 pieces of equipment. One is a hydrometer. It's basically a little thing you fill with water. It has a little swing arm, easy peasy, not very accurate. And then as you use it over time, salt builds up, calcium builds up, the arm just doesn't move as freely as it should. So it's not a very accurate thing, and it's something that you should probably steer away from. You can use a refractometer, which is what I use on my tank all the time. And basically you take a few drops of water and you drop it onto the prism, close the lid, and then you look through it. It will tell you where the salinity is, and it's measured in 2 different ways. It's measured in parts per thousand, specific gravity. Me personally, I usually shoot for parts per thousand. So as the water evaporates, the salt will stay. So I talked about this in a last video. As the water evaporates, your salt stays, which then means the salt concentrate is going to go up. If your tank is at 1.026 and you let a bunch of water evaporate, it's going to go to 1.027 or 1.028 or 1.029 until you add fresh water. It's going to keep rising. You can combat it by using a glass lid. That'll keep evaporation down, which will keep the salinity where it's supposed to be longer. I personally don't use a glass top. I actually have a acrylic screen. I use that because it looks nicer and you get proper gas exchange. So the water is going to evaporate regardless. So how you combat it, you have to add fresh water to it. As you add the fresh water, it keeps your salt where it's supposed to be. Now you can use the auto top off method, which is the method that I use. Has a little sensor, and so as that water level drops from evaporation, it triggers a pump in a bucket of fresh water and it dumps it back into the tank and fills it back to the sensor eye, and it shuts the pump off. The other way you could do it is manually adding water to a set point on your tank. When you first start out, that is something that you can get away with, but it gets old really fast, and so having an auto top off is a beautiful thing. All you gotta do is make sure you keep fresh water in your reservoir and you're good to go. The other one you can use is a digital salinity checker. Milwaukee makes one, and I believe Hannah makes one. I'll put a link to the description down below. Now those ones tend to be a little bit more expensive, so I actually don't use them. I actually just stick with the plain old refractometer. You can pick one up for 20-25 bucks on Amazon. So thing with the digital salinity reader and the refractometer, you want to have calibration fluid. Calibration fluid, a lot of people think you don't really need, but in my testing, I've actually seen quite a big difference between using RODI water, which is what most people use. I tested this. I calibrated the refractometer with the calibration fluid. The calibration fluid will always be 35 parts per thousand. So if your refractometer is off or your digital meter is off, you can adjust it to make sure that it reads 35 parts per thousand. What I ended up doing was I calibrated my refractometer. I knew it was 35 parts per thousand. Then I grabbed a couple drops of RODI water, put it on the refractometer, and then looked at it. The difference is actually quite big. It might not seem a lot, but in terms of salt water and the organisms that live in them, this swing is actually, it could be actually damaging to the corals and to their cells. It actually was off by 0.003 specific gravity. Now that's a huge difference, and if you were to go from RODI water to calibration fluid over a couple times, your salinity is going to be way out of whack because of the difference in that RODI water compared to the calibration fluid. So if you were going to use RODI water all of the time, you could probably get away with it, but just know that your salinity is probably going to be lower than what it actually is. My recommendation, get a bottle of calibration fluid. It will save you all of the headaches later in the future. When salinity changes, it's actually damaging to the coral cells, and so it's actually similar to a heat bleaching event, and they call it a freshwater bleach. So, and what happens is, as that water gets diluted with fresh water, the corals tend to bleach out, which means they'll turn white. Keeping salinity stable is one of the most important things in having a saltwater tank. Having the right equipment is definitely a plus. And that's it for salinity, guys. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, check out my latest video on water changes, which I'm going to post down in the link down in the description. And if you like the video, smash the like button, and don't forget, turn the notifications on so you'll get notified whenever I post new videos, and have some more content for you guys coming. So thanks for watching, and have a great afternoon. I will see you in the next one.